In this video, I'm going to teach you how to bring in an AutoCAD detail of a ceiling and fix it so it works better in Revit. And then I'm going to teach you how to save this detail so that you can use it in subsequent projects. And then I'm going to teach you finally how to bring in a Revit detail that's already developed and bring it into your sheet. So just a quick note on details. Revit thinks about all details in a very similar way, whether they're details about the flooring or a window or a wall detail. When you're bringing in actual detail views, it doesn't really matter what they are of. The second thing I want to talk to you about just briefly is the importance of um, creating details and saving them. So there's a lot of details that have probably already been created by a design firm. And so if you're going to use them to make your drawing process quicker, then it's important to work with them safely and save changes to them and save them into the repository where you found them. But also, if you get the chance to rework some details for your firm, make sure that you save them in a repository as well. The thing about working at a design firm is that details are constantly being remade for projects. And so there may be details that were created in AutoCAD projects a long time ago before the company switched over to Revit. And instead of redoing all of those details in Revit, you can bring them in as AutoCAD files and just kind of rework them a little bit. But the important part, of course, is once you have reworked a CAD detail into Revit, to go ahead and save it back into the repository, however method that, whatever method the design firm uses to do so, so that work doesn't have to be duplicated. So what we're going to do now is start by opening up a detail that was created in AutoCAD and then switching it over to a Revit file. Now keep in mind that AutoCAD and Revit are both Autodesk projects or products, so they're meant to kind of work hand in hand, but there are some steps that are really important to remember. So eventually, we're going to end by having the ceiling details that reflect the changes that we've made in our reflected ceiling plan at the bottom of this sheet, and we'll shift these up. For right now, though, I need to take this AutoCAD file and convert it into a Revit file. So what I'll do first is I'm going to just hit the save button and make sure that this is saved as is. Then I'm going to create a new a new Revit project. Then I'm going to create a detail view. So I don't want this detail that I'm about to bring in to read as project information. I want to read it, I want it to read as just a drafting view or a detail view. So I'm going to hit drafting view here. I'm going to call this um, acoustical ceiling tile detail. Now I know that this detail was drawn at 3-inch scale, and I'll show you how I know. This is the AutoCAD file that we're going to be working with. Okay, so this was one that was created a long time ago in AutoCAD before the firm switched over to Revit. But it's, there's a lot of legacy information that exists in AutoCAD that's still useful for firms. So that's the file that we're going to use in case you don't have AutoCAD. And so when I bring in that detail, I'm going to bring it in at 3-inch scale. Otherwise, it's going to come in wonky. If it's drawn at one scale in AutoCAD and brought in Revit at a different scale, it won't look right. So let's go ahead and hit OK. All right. So now we've created this detail view, but there's nothing there. So now what we have to do is go to Insert and import a CAD file, and there's our detail. Now yours probably says preserve, and that means Revit is asking us, do you want to keep it colorful like how it is in AutoCAD? Because of course AutoCAD refers to different layers with different colors and pen weights. Revit doesn't do that. So if you bring it in as preserve, it'll come in colorful, which will make it hard to read and make it so that we have to draw more. If we bring it in black and white, we save ourselves a little bit of work. So we'll hit open here. And here's our detail. All right, so now what we have to do is we want to make this look like the rest of the drawings and details in our project. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to do a partial explode. And what that's going to allow me to do is work with these things and create new text boxes. So right now, these are reading as a multi-line text, and this leader, all this is separate stuff. So what I'm going to do is, just like we did with other projects and other drawings, I'm going to create a text box with a series of line segments and leaders, and I'm going to recreate all of this information here. So I'm going to do click, and we don't have all of our stuff on our drawings the way that this does it. We're going to have it all come out to one side. And I'm going to type my information here. Okay, I'm going to just show you a couple tricks and then I'll pause and do it myself. So I'm going to change this type here from the 1/4 inch. And I really want it to be 1/8 inch because that's what we're using on our other sheets. But remember, this file doesn't have all of that loaded in. So we have to hit edit type, duplicate, and make a new font size. Okay. So now it'll allow me to grab this information again. It's a little hard to read here, so I'm going to pull it off of this, and then you'll be able to reference mine. So I'm going to change that. I'm also going to condense these details, or pardon me, these dimension lines just a little bit. Because I'm going to try to get this just a little bit smaller. And I can delete all this extra stuff. And I'm just clicking and deleting. I'm going to bring this note over to this side over here. I'm also going to create a little text box here that refers to this dimension that says see plan for wall type, because otherwise this note is just a little bit too wide for this dimension here. But what I am going to have to do is get rid of the text, and I'll show you how to do that. So see, it's going to give me the dimension, but that's not right because we have all different types of wall thicknesses, where we want to leave ourselves open to that for different projects. So if I double click on this, it allows me to replace with text. Okay, then I can delete that. I'm also going to try to condense this information just a little bit more by shifting this break line here. And you can see break lines indicate things that go on much farther, but we don't need to show all that. We don't need this. I'm trying to get this detail to be small because my text boxes are going to be large, or long rather. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to delete some of this information and create new leader lines and text boxes. Okay, so you can see that I've made some adjustments here, and I've even brought in the detail box. I don't love to always have details and things outlined, but a lot of people do. So I'm going to just leave it right here for now and hit the save button. And now we're going to go ahead and save this detail. And we'll go ahead and call this the ACT ceiling detail, but I'm going to get rid of the DWG extension. And I've done this before, so that's why I've got a duplicate in there. But go ahead and hit save. So now that detail is, the way that we saved it, I saved it in sort of in my repository of Revit details that are ready to be brought into any project. So now what I do is I hit the save button like always, and then I'm going to go back to my project, the reflected ceiling plan sheet. We'll go ahead and go to the detail sheet because that's where we're going to put this. I'm going to move these up. And now I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to create a new view. We're going to call this the acoustical ceiling tile, ceiling detail. Now, I created that, but I actually think what's going to happen is when I insert this file. Let's see, it might bring in a second view. Let's take a look. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in that view that I just created. Okay, so this is the one that I just did. Okay, so there's my view. You can see it brought it in as a second detail, and the first one I just made was empty. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. So since it's already brought in as a view, I don't need to create a view before I bring it in. So that's good to know. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag that onto our sheet. Okay, now it's a little bit large, but what I can do is I've got a couple options. I can bring these up just a little bit more to make room. And I might be able to just tighten this up just a little bit more if I start to shift some things around. Worst case scenario, if we didn't want to mess with it too much, we could also just bring this detail down just a little bit. It's never good to have stuff really crammed on your sheets. Just realizing, of course, that it's gonna have to be jumbled up and you're gonna have to rework the notes. What I'm gonna do is shift some things around. I'm gonna bring the title bar closer. I might adjust my crop windows just a little bit to work these out and get it all formatted so it's back on the sheet. But I do have now an AutoCAD file that has been converted into a workable Revit detail and brought in, and now the most important part, saved into the repository so that my colleagues do not have to redo work that I have already done. And now I'm going to do the same process, but with a detail that has already been created. And so I'm going to go to Insert, Insert from File, Insert Views, and I'm going to go to the desktop and grab my detail that's already been made and ready for me. Maybe another colleague made it for me. And it's going to be the soffit to ACT detail. Okay, and so this is a detail of what we created in our kitchen area. And so you can see here, it's got the drywall soffit that pops up to the acoustical ceiling tile. So we're including this detail in our project because this is what we have. This is what we have going on, and we need to explain to somebody how to build it. So I'm going to rename this and put it in all caps. And I'm going to go to our wall section here. And we'll drag that view over. It's going to be big. This one I am probably going to have to bring down the size just a little bit because that's maybe going to be a little bit more work. We'll see what I can do once I pause and mess with it a little bit. So, but if you look at these two, even before we mess with our graphic standards and make it look good, you can see that we have the two special ceiling treatments that we did. We've got the soffit to acoustical ceiling tile, and then we've got where we have created a wall opening, and there's acoustical ceiling tile on both sides. What we put in our reflected ceiling plan here, that's a section. If you slice right through here, you would see that there's a drywall header and then two different acoustical ceiling tile ceilings, but at the same height. So that detail happens here, and it happens here, and here, and here. So we've got it throughout our project. And then that, that detail is, the second detail we brought in is what's happening here. So I could do a section tag, but the thing is that we don't necessarily want to call it out in a specific place because it's typical. So anywhere that it happens, that's the detail we want the contractor to use. So what I'm going to do is just kind of take a moment to look at that sheet and mess with all the little parts and pieces to get this sheet going. And you've done it before, so you've gotten lots of practice. You'll be able to do it too. And when we're done, we'll have a really nice looking sheet.